What are the best foods for fat loss? That's a question I get asked all the time. I've coached clients to IFBB and Natural Pro Cards, to national and world records in powerlifting. I've worked with professional athletes, Olympic athletes, CrossFit Games athletes, done huge transformations. I've worked with a large population. It's been a 25-year career, over 3,000 clients. I've done a lot. And I get that question all the time. Is what are the right foods for X? What are the right foods for fat loss? What are the right foods for building muscle? What are the right foods for performance? You name it. And in today's podcast, I want to cover that question. Unfortunately, the answer that I give to all of my clients and the answer I'm going to give in today's podcast is not the answer that people want. People want those common like myth type answers where if you sprinkle cinnamon on everything, that raises your metabolism, or cayenne pepper, or whatever the heck. There's a million things that are out there nowadays, and it's supposed to be this hack where you get to essentially eat what you want, but if you do this one thing or these 2 or 3 things throughout the day, drink a liter of water before you eat food, and then your digestion does blah blah blah. I don't know, all this crap. And it would be nice if that stuff worked to a significant degree. Overwhelmingly, most of it doesn't work at all. If it works at all, it's only a really small amount, and never enough for what people want it to be. In regards to when they think of the best foods for fat loss, the amount of fat they want to lose, those answers are never going to help them reach that level of goal. Same thing with building muscle, performance maximization, whatever it might be. So when we think about what are the best foods for X, whatever the goal might be, there are answers. There are answers, but it's unfortunately going to take some trial and error and live and learn, and there's an individual aspect to it. Now, I say unfortunate because that takes time. The fortunate aspect, though, is that you get to decide what's right for you. There isn't a one-size-fits-all when it comes to the right foods for whatever your goal might be. It's what foods are best for you. So rather than what foods are best for fat loss, what foods are best for you? Rather than what foods are best for muscle growth, what foods are best for you? That's what we would answer. When we think about what foods are best for you, the first thing we're going to look at is digestion. And that dictates an enormous amount of things. If we digest the food well, then we're going to control a lot of aspects. One thing is going to be inflammation in the gut. If the food digests well, we're not going to have a ton of water retention, a ton of bloating, a ton of digestive issues, which even if that food was supposed to be the best food in the world, you wouldn't be able to be consistent with it because your body disagrees with it. For example, I'm allergic to canola oil. Not that canola oil would be considered one of the best foods, but if I have anything with canola oil in it, even if it's a small amount, I don't digest that very well. My intestines are then disrupted, and everything I eat for the rest of that day and into the next day, I don't digest well either. It kind of messes up and annoys the lining of my intestine and kind of the gut bacteria, all the happy stuff that we want to have in the digestive process. It disrupts all of that, and it takes my body time to rebuild that. So I've learned to stay away from canola oil. That's actually relatively easy to do. I don't buy foods that are based, have canola oil in the ingredients. And then when I go to restaurants, I just ask them if they cook in canola oil. If they do, I don't order whatever that food is. And if it's a meat, I'll ask them if they can just grill it without oil, something like that. So my wife and I, we go to a restaurant called Burton's. I don't even know what the heck it's else. It's Burton's something and grill. I have no clue. But we live near Charlotte, North Carolina, and they have 2 Burton's locations. And we like that because the owner is gluten-free. And Meredith is gluten-free. She requires gluten-free foods. If she has any gluten, I mean like a sprinkle of a crumb of a piece of bread, it puts her stomach into it seizes in her intestines, and she gets incredible amount of pain, and she's actually had to go to the emergency room before for it. So we have to be very careful when we're at home. We cook with gluten-free based stuff all the time, so much so that I completely forget that we do it. But when we go to restaurants, we always go to a gluten-free restaurant, and then I just ask about canola oil and make sure that works as well. So that's an example of something where even if like canola oil was supposed to be the greatest thing for fat loss, I wouldn't be able to do it because every time I eat it, I get an upset stomach, my intestines get inflamed, I have low energy, I feel like crap, I can't eat anything. It just really disrupts the entirety of what would be a healthy environment for myself. Now that's going to be true for everybody, is there's going to be foods that maybe they digest well, they don't digest well, maybe they like, they don't like. There's going to be foods that if the food list of whatever your goal was actually standardized and everybody who wanted to lose body fat, they had to eat like these 5 foods. That would suck because those 5 foods aren't going to be great for everyone. Think about people who are lactose intolerant. And, you know, if you look at most kind of like aesthetic athletes like bodybuilders, bikini, figure, wellness, whatever, blah, blah, blah. A very common meal is eggs and oatmeal. Well, if you're lactose intolerant, you're probably not going to have the eggs, or you're going to have a ridiculous amount of lactate to try to eat the eggs, and then that's still probably not going to go very well. So it would be a bummer if eggs and oatmeal was the only breakfast that was supposed to be the best, and you couldn't have it. So although the answer we're going to go through that starts with digestion, I know I'm getting kind of off on a tangent, but it starts with digestion. Although this answer isn't going to be a concrete answer and you can just write down XYZ and go do XYZ and be happy, that's actually a good thing because it allows us to find what works best for us. So for digestion, one of the things I think I like, a phrase I like, is instead of eating what you like, eat what likes you. Pretty cool way of wording that, I think. And that gives us the mindset of, I do want to find foods I like. That's actually one of the other points we're going to make, is we want to focus on foods that we can be consistent with, which means foods that we prefer. That's actually my second point. But back to the first point, digestion. We do want to eat foods that we like. So eat foods that you like. But you also want to eat foods that like you. And that means you digest them well. For myself, I've done a ton of experiments over the years. One time I did a carb-based experiment where I kept my protein sources the same, my calorie amount the same per day, and I rotated through my carbohydrate source. For 8 weeks, I did, I believe it was oatmeal. Yeah, it was oatmeal because I hated it. Oh my God, it was oats. So I used oats as my only carb source. Horrible digestion, bloated, no energy, felt like crap. I then went to sweet potatoes, and I actually really like sweet potatoes. I had okay energy, not the best energy, but a hell of a lot better than oats. But the downside was I was so full each meal from the sweet potato that I struggled to eat the next meal. And I ended by like the 3rd, 4th, 5th meal of the day, I was bloated, uncomfortable, and didn't have great energy. Then the third carb source I used in that cycle was 8 weeks of jasmine rice. And I found like, oh man, it was like the Goldilocks example. You know, the third thing was just perfect. It was just right. When I switched to jasmine rice, it was amazing. I had good energy. It digested quickly enough that I was hungry for my next meal based on the amount of calories I needed to have, the way I wanted to distribute out my protein. I do have a preference, if I can, to only have about 40 to 60 grams of protein in one meal. And I've done diets where I've actually had over 400 grams of protein a day for longer than a month. So I've done a lot of crazy protein experiments. I've also done where I've only done half my body weight in protein. Saw how that kind of felt. That was horrible, by the way, for recovery, and that was definitely a bummer of an experiment. But I've gone really low, I've gone really high. And in all those experiments, what I usually find that I digest best is around 40 to 60 grams of protein in a meal. Now, for reference, I'm 6 foot tall, 250 pounds. I work out 6 to 7 days a week. My step count is usually somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 a day. So based on those metrics, for me, 40 to 60 grams of protein in a meal is good. So I've digested that well. I tend to like that. So when I can, that's how I like to distribute that out, which means I might have to have 4 meals, 5 meals, even 6 meals a day to get where I need to get. So the meal frequency is determined by my breakdown of protein per meal. And then that also dictated how quickly I needed to digest those carbohydrates. So the sweet potato was a great option, but for me to manage sweet potato, I would have had to decrease the frequency of my meals to make the gaps longer, which means I would have had to increase the amount of protein per meal. But I don't like doing that because it doesn't digest well. So for me, the best balance of digestion of protein plus energy plus managing my hunger between meals turned out to be the jasmine rice. So that's what I base my higher carb meals off of is jasmine rice. My lower carb meals are usually fruit or a vegetable. So that's how I kind of manage it, but that's also, you can hear the story of how I figured that out. And I do that with all my clients, is we go through and we kind of experiment with the foods they currently already eat. I help them adjust the amounts, and then we kind of tweak it as we go based on how they feel. One of the things I really like to do is use whatever app the client uses. So we don't have, C3 Method doesn't currently have an app. Let's just say that might not always be true. So that's a fun thing. But I don't like to use a standardized nutrition app that I make all of my clients change to, because I actually like using whatever app they currently already use. Usually they have an eating history within that app that I can read, research, look through, and then I log into all of my clients' individual apps every week, check through their foods, give them feedback on individual food selection, on meals, combinations, on daily distribution, all that stuff. So I actually like them using whatever app they already use, and then I go to the app that they use. So I have about 4,000 apps on my phone, and I just log into them and do it that way. But that's what we're looking for when we look for digestion, and that's the first consideration is eat foods you like, but also eat foods that like you. That would be the first determining factor of what are the best foods for, whether that's fat loss, muscle growth, performance, whatever it might be, is digestion. The second thing is preference, making sure that you actually do eat foods you like. And that's so we can be consistent with them. What determines progress is consistency. One of the ways that we typically monitor consistency is by counting calories. Whether counting calories is 100% accurate or not, I would say that's not even really up for debate, because it's not. But one of the best things is it's consistent. So if every time you eat a food, let's say for example, every time you cook meat, and you measure out 5 ounces. Well, was that 5 ounces pre-cooked or post-cooked? The great answer is, it doesn't matter. How the hell doesn't that matter? Is as long as you do it the same way every time, it doesn't matter. Because if you do it, say, pre-cooked weight, and we find out over time our recovery is a little bit slow and we're not getting the growth we would expect from our muscle-based training, we might want to increase our protein. So I would say, okay, go ahead and increase the portion size of your meat by X amount. And they would go ahead and do that. And then all of a sudden our recovery got better. Well, it didn't really matter whether that meat was pre-cooked or post-cooked measured. It's just we had a consistent amount. We saw what the body responded to via that amount. And we knew that adding a little bit more might give us a better benefit. That's it. So counting calories, even if it's not 100% accurate, as long as it's consistent, that's actually what we really care more about. So if we could count food in, some other metric, that's fine. We just give it the metric of calories. That's something that gives us consistency. So I am a fan of the concept of calories in, calories out, in the sense that if somebody does want to lose body weight, bringing total calorie intake down over time does typically help do that. If somebody wants to increase body weight, increasing calories over time does typically help towards that. However, there's an enormous amount of experiential factors that come into play. So it's not only calories in, calories out, void everything else. Calories in, calories out might be kind of the underlying theme that we're using, the foundation that we're going to build all of our other habits off of. So we want to eat foods that we like, so that way we can be consistent with them. And the other reason why is that consistency is needed for whatever the goal is. If we want to lose fat, that's going to take several weeks, if not months, maybe almost a year, depending on how big your goal is. It might even take over a year, depending on how big your goal is. If you want to build muscle, that's going to likely take a lot longer. So that's going to take some time. So therefore, we have to be consistent over that time. If it's performance, you want to be able to dial that in. I work with a lot of youth athletes right now. Like we have a lot of swimmers actually, which is really cool. A lot of swimmers between 12 and 18 years old who are females. And it's kind of like you help one person, they refer their friends, and it kind of builds up, which is really fun. So I'm working with a lot of teenage swimmers at the moment. And one of the things we're looking at is meet day nutrition. Is, okay, how do they eat leading into the event, like the night before? How do they eat the morning of? How do they eat the day of? Based also not only on best performance, but also anxiety, How do they feel? We also talk about how they feel about their body. Are they happy with the way they look? I want them to be able to perform well, but I also want them to be happy with the way they look. So we talk about a lot of these things. And being able to be consistent with what we eat helps us better control all those other elements as well. Not only can we have an increase in consistency of performance if we're consistent with our food, but we can better control other elements such as body fat control, weight management, and other factors that might come into play that are quote unquote secondary goals, but they're as important as that big goal. So those are the first two things we look at is digestion, eat what likes you, and then preference, eat what you like. And then the third thing is going to be hunger management. And this would be similar to the story I said about the oats versus sweet potato versus jasmine rice. Hunger management helps. And what we eat factors into that. If I eat foods that digest very quickly, I'm going to be hungry quicker than if I eat foods that digest slowly. So you might find in your day, okay, there's a 5 to 6 hour gap between this meal, but a 2 to 3 hour gap between that meal. So maybe the 5 to 6 hour gap, that meal that front loads, like on the front end of that gap, you might want to have a higher amount of fats. So you might throw in, avocados is supposed to be like this healthy thing that everybody eats on Instagram, but good God, buying avocados is a pain in the butt. But whatever the healthy fat that you use, I usually like to use nut butter. That's like my favorite one. It doesn't turn brown and go bad, or it's not like ready yet, and then the day it's ready, did you eat it or not, and then it's bad the next day. Ugh. So avocados are a huge pain in the butt. Not a big fan of them. They taste delicious. I mean, guacamole is amazing. But having to manage those things is a pain in the butt. So I like nut butter. You can do oils. There's other things. People will use, like you can use cheese. I have clients in France who eat a ridiculous amount of wine and cheese. So good for them. But cheese is used as a fat source. Probably not the one I'd want to recommend on the most scenarios and most people. But you would use a fat source to bridge that 5 to 6 hour gap. Then if there's only a 2 or 3 hour gap between that second and third meal, you're going to focus more on faster digesting carbohydrates, and that might be refined sources like, so white rice, white bread, it might be a tortilla wrap. Maybe you're just going to have just a lean meat and some vegetables. And maybe not a high amount because there would be fiber in the vegetables, but lean meat, fruit, and vegetables. There you go. So maybe you have some chicken, a little bit of blueberries and sweet peas, and that meal digests pretty quickly for you, and you're hungry again in 2 to 3 hours, and that works out really well. So that's the third factor we look at is what are the best foods for X, whatever your goal is we have number 1 is digestion, number 2 is preference that we can be consistent, and number 3 is hunger management. Does this food in this meal match what I need from this meal? Does it give me low sustainable energy over a long period of time, or does it give me a nice quick boost of energy because I'm about to go work out? What do I need from this meal? These are the 3 factors that I help educate clients to figure out is what best matches their needs in digestion, preference, and then kind of the digestion rate. So hunger management, essentially. We manage those 3 things. Now, what foods we select from, this might be more leaning into what people actually wanted. So at this far into the podcast, I'm finally getting to what you really wanted, is what food should we choose from? Is it better to eat jasmine rice or an Oreo? Well, if you are that, calories in, calories out camp, you're only going to focus on that. You're going to say it doesn't matter as long as the calories are the same. But you're going to experience eating Oreo and versus jasmine rice differently. The energy you get from Oreos, I've never eaten enough Oreos to counter the amount of jasmine rice I eat. So there's an experiment. Maybe I'll have to try. Oh, shucks. But that might be something where it tastes delicious, but you don't really have great sustainable energy from it. And you might start a workout, but then bonk and crash halfway through because that was more sugar-based calories than a little bit of a slower sustained energy, such as like a jasmine rice might give you. That's how we're going to decide our foods is, again, it comes down to digestion rate, preference, and hunger management. And then the type of food, I like to ask the person, I kind of give them the mindset of earth or animal. Is it from the earth? Does it grow in the earth, from the earth, or is it an animal? Another way people say it is, can you grow it, pick it, or hunt it? That's another phrasing. I don't hunt, so I don't naturally think of that phrasing. But I don't have anything against hunting. My dad never hunted. He worked 20 hours a day. So that's the example I got of work ethic. And since he didn't hunt, he never taught me how to hunt, and I didn't really get into it. But that is how we would think of food selection, is earth or animal. And again, the other phrasing is, can you grow it, pick it, or hunt it? Typically, if you choose foods that fit into that category, earth or animal, you're probably going to pick things that are good. Now, does a protein powder come from the earth or an animal? Not directly, but what it's derived from does. Now, when you look at, like, say, an Oreo, there's going to be a lot of synthetic components, like artificial type things in it. And so it's not really derived from nature, whereas a protein powder is more so derived from nature. Now, that is, I wouldn't call it a caveat. It's just understanding that at one point in time, was this a natural thing? And then did we refine it to improve it towards a goal? So if my goal was to get good quality protein in, but have it digest very quickly, then it helped to convert that protein to a powder. Make sense? So it started with something that was earth or animal, and then we just had to kind of modify it a bit to get it to a better purpose for what we wanted that food thing to serve. That's a way of looking at it, earth or animal. Whew, okay, I think I got through a lot of that. Those are going to be kind of the culmination of the answer to what are the best foods for, whether it's fat loss, strength, muscle building, performance, blah, 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 whatever your goal might be. What are the best foods for that goal? It's going to be, does it digest well? So does your body like it? And then do you like it? Are you, like, is it a preference? Can you be consistent with it over time? How does it help you manage hunger depending on what you need at that meal and the meal frequency you're at? And then in terms of overall selection, from earth or animal, is it a quote unquote natural type, product that might have been changed at some point, but did it at least start from a natural component? And that's probably in most cases going to be the better choice. Awesome. So I think we got through all that. That's a lot of really good information. It does require some trial and error. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to, write them in the comment section of whatever the heck platform you're on right now. I get, alerts for everything. So just write it in the comments, or you can always reach out to us on our website, which is www.c3method.com. The 3 is spelled out THREE, so it's THREE method.com. If you're interested in one-on-one coaching so I can take you through this process, again, you can reach out on the website. If you're interested in our nutrition coaching certification so you can actually take others through this type of process, you can reach out on the website as well. For the coaching certification, it's taught one-on-one, so it's not read a book, pass the test, and then, good luck to you. I actually teach it one-on-one. We go through the process. I support people for 3 months. So that way, as they start implementing the process in clients, I'm there 24/7 on WhatsApp to answer questions for 3 full months, which is great. I really love that. It's been a lot of fun. And so far, I'm 100% success for people making more money in those 3 months than what they invested into the certification. And I am going to freaking keep that. I'm really fired up about that. Eventually, as I get more data points, I'm going to start to advertise that. But I want to make sure I can be consistent with it before I advertise it. So that's a pretty cool trend that I'm actually tracking and excited about. Then we also have our referral program. If you go through our nutrition coaching certification and you refer somebody and they sign up for it, you do get a kickback on that as well. So there's tons of benefits, lots of good stuff. If you're interested about that, just shoot us an email or reach out to us on our website, c3method.com. Okay, that's everything. If you need anything, let me know. Thank you for your time. I appreciate your time, and I hope this was helpful.